Hi, I'm Ashley and welcome back to my channel. So at the time of filming this video, it's Friday, July 18th, which means we are a little more than halfway through the year, which is crazy. But it also means that it is time for the mid-year book tag again. So in today's video, I will be answering 13 questions that will tell you a little bit about how my reading year has been going so far. So let's jump right in with question number 1, which is best book you've read so far this year. So I feel like I've already read so many amazing books this year. I've given like so many books 5 stars. But my favorite book of the year so far currently is The Floating World by Axio. And this one is by the same author who wrote The Girl Who Fell Beneath the Sea. So this is book 1 in a YA fantasy duology that follows 2 alternating perspectives. So first main character is Ren, and her adoptive family is a group of traveling performers who travel across the country putting on acrobatic shows. And during one of these performances at a village, the village ends up being attacked by a demon, and her uncle ends up being injured by the demon, and he is left wounded with a poison wound. And so Ren heads off on a journey to find an antidote to his poison to save him. And our second main character is Sunho, who is an ex-soldier, and he remembers little of his life from before 2 years ago when he woke up with only his name and his sword. And so since then, he has been a sword for hire, and he ends up taking a job to find this mysterious girl who can wield light. And the two of them end up meeting when Ren kind of saves Sunho's life, and so they end up becoming travel companions. But little does Sunho know that Ren is the girl that he is looking for. And so our story goes from there. And this was a warm-hearted fantasy, which I love warm-hearted fantasies. And Ren and Sunho, I just love them both as characters, and I love seeing the relationship develop between them. It just felt very natural and organic, and they start off like being kind of wary of each other and then become friends, and then by the end of the book they are more than friends. Another thing that made this book a lot of fun for me to read was the Final Fantasy VII vibes. So the author had mentioned that this book was inspired by Final Fantasy, and I could 100% see that influence in this book. And it just made it so much fun for me to read and just pick out those similarities. And this does end on a kind of heart-wrenching cliffhanger, but the second book is coming out later this year in October, so that's not really that far away. So question number 2. Best sequel you've read so far this year. So far this year I've read 8 sequels, which before answering this question I didn't realize I've read so many, so that's pretty good for me because I feel like sometimes I'm just really bad at continuing series. And so when I first read this question, there was one book that popped immediately into my mind. And that was this book right here, Emily Wilde's Compendium of Lost Tales. So this is the 3rd and final book in the Emily Wilde series, and I ended up loving this one just as much as the other 2. I love this world so much. I love our main character Emily and the love interest Wendell and each of their pets, Emily's dog Shadow and Wendell's cat Orga. And I just love the whole atmosphere of this book, how it feels mostly cozy, but also at some times it does have like a dark edge to it because of the nature of the fairies, with them being mischievous and dangerous. And I was very happy with how the series concluded in this book, and I really felt like the story came full circle again. Question number 3. New release you haven't read yet but want to. So this question, there are so many books that I want to read that came out this year. All you have to do is like look at my new releases videos that I release every month and see all the releases that I want to read. But for the answer to this question, I decided to go with one of my most anticipated releases that just recently came out this month. And that is 3 Shattered Souls by Mai Corlin. So this is the 3rd and final book in the 5 Broken Blades trilogy, and I loved book 1, I loved book 2 in this series, and I'm super excited to read book 3 because in book 2 there was something that happened that kind of just like broke my heart in 2, and also I just really need my favorite couple in this series to get a happy ending, but I am kind of scared because I'm like, either they're gonna get a happy ending or one of them is going to die. So yeah, I'm really excited for this one. Question number 4, most anticipated release for the second half of the year. So this one, I looked at it and I was like, I feel like a lot of my books I've been like really anticipated came out the first half of this year, But then I remembered one that I'm super excited for. And that book is Brimstone by Kelly Hart, which comes out on November 18th and it's the sequel to Quicksilver. So I read this one last year and I loved it. And this was also like one of the most popular fantasy romance books of 2024. Though I will say that it's been such a long time since I've read this, I feel like I've forgotten a lot of the small details, so I'm definitely going to need to like go back and reread this before I read the second one. But if you're interested in knowing more about this one, I do have a reading vlog of this book on my channel, so I'll link that down below. Question number 5, biggest disappointment. I never liked this question because I go into the year always wanting to read great books that I love. I never want to read a disappointing book, but unfortunately it usually happens at some point. Though I will say so far this year I haven't read any books that I have outright hated or not liked, although I have read some that I've had like mixed feelings about and some that have disappointed me a little bit. And so on that note, I am sad to say that like my most disappointing read of the year so far has been actually the second book in a duology. And that book is A Venom, Dark and Sweet by Julie Lin. So I read the first book in this duology in April, and that was A Magic Steeped in Poison. And this one is about a girl who lives in a world where there is tea magic. And her mother was a tea master, but unfortunately before the start of the story, her mother passes away because she drinks poisonous tea. The main character's sister was also poisoned, but she is still alive thanks to her mother's quick thinking. But unfortunately, like, she is slowly dying, and so our main character is desperate to find a cure for her sister. And so when our main character hears that the kingdom is holding a competition to find the greatest tea master, our main character ends up entering the contest in the hopes of finding a cure for her sister. And so this first book, I really enjoyed it. I love the tea magic system and the world and the whole competition aspect of this first book. The only thing that felt a little lacking to me, and the reason I gave it 4 stars and not 5, it was the romance. I felt like the romance felt underdeveloped in this one, and I just wanted to know more about the love interest in general as well, because I felt like his character wasn't fully developed in this first book. And so I went into the second book with high hopes, and I was like, oh my gosh, like, this might be a 5-star because it's the second book, and now maybe we'll get more development with the love interest. And right off the bat, this book has multiple perspectives, so you get a perspective from our main character and you get the perspective of the love interest, which you did not get in this one. So I was excited for those perspectives because I was like, oh my gosh, here we go, I get to know more about the love interest. But just overall, this book, it kind of fell short for me, and I found myself just like disappointed, and by the end I just didn't care anymore about the story, which is never good. I just got kind of bored, and also there was some like plot decisions in here personally to me just didn't sit very well with me, and just like overall I feel like this was just okay. Question number 6, biggest surprise. So unlike biggest disappointment, I really like this question because I just love finding a book that maybe I didn't have high expectations for, but then I end up loving. And that has happened to me this year. And that book was The Notorious Virtues by Alwyn Hamilton. And I borrowed this one from the library, so I will put a picture up of it on the screen. But this one, I went in being intrigued, but I didn't have super high expectations. It was just a book that I found out about while I was researching new releases. But I ended up loving this book so much. So this one is another multiple perspective YA fantasy. And 2 of our 4 main characters, our 2 female main characters, are members of this very prestigious and powerful magical family in this world, and their family pretty much controls all the magic and all the wealth in their country. And one of our main characters grew up within the family, and she always expected to be the next heir of the family, and she grew up pretty much getting whatever she wanted, while our other member of this family was actually an unwanted child, and she was given away upon birth to this convent, and she has grown up in this convent surrounded by nuns who look down upon her and tell her that she is a bad child, and they're always like locking her away in punishment for like the smallest things. And so before the start of the story, one of the girl's mothers, who was supposed to become the heir of the family, ends up being killed, and because of that, now they need to choose a new heir. And the way that this family chooses a new heir is through a magical competition that is administered by an ancient magical creature. And so they have to pass different trials, and the trials come to them and they don't go to the trials. So the trials could happen at any time. The trials don't care what you are doing. They will just happen. Our two main female characters and some of their other cousins end up participating in this magical competition, and our story goes from there. But it's like there's so much more going on than just that magical competition as well, because there's also like a rebellion going on in the background. And one of our female characters is trying to figure out the truth behind her mother's death, and the other one's trying to figure out the identity of her father. And then you have our two main male characters who we also get perspectives from, which one of them is a reporter and the other is a guard for this powerful family. So I just really loved everything about this book. The characters, the plot, the magic system, the writing style. And there's just like so much going on in this book. It's fast-paced, there's lots of family drama, there's a sense of found family, and I just had so much fun with this one, and I really can't wait for the second one because this first one ended on an evil cliffhanger. And if you want to know more about this book and more about my thoughts while I was reading it, I do have a reading blog for it up on my channel, and I'll post that down below. Question number 7, favorite new authors. So this question I always have trouble with because I feel like in order for an author to be a favorite of mine, I've had to read and liked more than one book from them. And so far this year, I haven't read multiple books by an author that is new to me. But I do have one that could potentially become a new favorite author, and that is the author of The Scorpion and the Night Blossom, Amelie Wen Zhao. I read this in June and loved it, and I do own one of her other books, but I haven't read it yet, and that one is Song of Silver, Flame Like Night. So since I loved this one, it's possible that I could love this one, and if I do end up loving this one, that means that she could be a new favorite author for me. Question number 8, newest fictional crush. So for this one, I'm going with the love interest from a book that I just finished this morning. And so that character is Fox from Heir of Storms by Lauren Hamilton Murray. And I won't say too much about this book because I am going to be posting a reading vlog on it in a couple of weeks. But Fox, the love interest, I just loved him. He is one of those bad boy characters. He is an illegitimate son of the king, so he's a prince. And he is arrogant and cocky and has a devil-may-care attitude and doesn't really care what people think and does what he wants. But you also get the sense that there's more to his character, that there is a story there. And I just found him such a fun character, and I just love the dynamic between him and our main female character, Blaze. And I also need to mention that while he does come across as like a bad boy, there's a moment in this book where the main character Blaze is trying to find a birthday present for her younger brother Renly, and Fox ends up helping her and brings her to his cat that's just had kittens, and he's like, you can give him a kitten and you can also keep a kitten. And that was just such a cute and heartwarming scene. Question number 9, newest favorite characters. So for this one, I just went with characters that came immediately to mind, and there are two that I want to talk about. And the first is a minor character in A Harvest of Hearts, and it is a black talking cat, and he is just so funny and adorable, and I just love the dynamic between him and our main character Foss. And if you haven't read this one, this is a cozy fantasy with Howl's Moving Castle vibes, and it takes place in a world where there are magic workers, but in order for the magic workers to perform their magic, they have to use pieces of the human heart. So our main character in this is Foss, and she's the butcher's daughter, and she's used to seeing like female magic workers come to their village, and these female magic workers are super pretty, and that's how they steal pieces of people's hearts, by the people coming infatuated with them. But then one day, a male magic worker comes to their town, and Foss has never seen a male magic worker before. She didn't think they existed. She ends up looking at him and catching his eye and being like charmed by him. And so he leaves, and when he leaves, she just doesn't feel right. So she thinks that he has stolen a piece of her heart. And so she heads off on a journey to find him and demand that he give back her heart. And so our story goes from there. And then the second character that came to mind was Jen from Legend of the White Snake by Shirley. So Jen is actually a snake spirit, so he can take the form of a human and a snake. And I just love like how he is powerful, but also he's kind-hearted. And one example is that he ends up saving this snake from a human that he doesn't know. And in order to save her, he gives her a piece of his spirit pearl, and essentially that is like his soul's. And so this book follows him and also a prince who is trying to find a cure for his dying mother. And I would say this is very much a fantasy romance because the romance and the story are intertwined and you can't separate them. And a large focus of this story is on the romance. And overall, this is just like a really cute, fast, heartwarming, and cozy read. Hello, editing Ashley here. So I was editing this video and I was staring at the knight and the moth in the background that's on my bookshelf in the video, and I realized I made a grave mistake. So for this question, I left out one of my favorite characters of this year so far, and that is the gargoyle from The Knight and the Moth. So I just had to come in and add that in here because me leaving him out is crime. And the gargoyle in this book, who calls everyone Bartholomew, pretty much like made this book for me. I loved his character so much, so I need to mention him for this one. Right, so onwards to the next question. Question number 10. Book that made you cry. So I don't usually like full out cry or sob when reading sad books or watching sad movies, but when I do read a really sad book, my eyes do tear up and sometimes a tear or two comes out. And so the most emotional book that I read so far this year has definitely been The Beast We Bury by D.L. Taylor. Like, this book is a YA fantasy, but it's such a roller coaster of emotions and it's just so raw and powerful. And I do have a reading vlog of this one up on my channel, so I'll post that down below if you want to know more about it. But this is the first book in a duology, and it follows our main character Mancella, and she has just gone through like so much abuse in her life, emotional, physical, and a lot of it is from her father. And she has the power to summon animals, but before she can summon animals, she has to kill them with her bare hands. And that's like another like heart-wrenching, hard to read aspect of the book as well, because you do have scenes where she is killing the animals. And even though it's very like heart-wrenching and emotional to read, I think it's very powerful and well done. And it skillfully shows a girl who's finally just like had enough and decides that even though it's scary, she is going to try to take control of her life. The person that really finally pushes her to take the first steps to taking control of her life is our other main character and love interest, Silver. And so we do also get perspective chapters from his point of view as well. Question number 11, book that made you happy. So for this one, I am mentioning a series that I have mentioned before on my channel, but I just love it so much and I feel like more people need to know about it and read it. And it is my favorite cozy fantasy series, and it is Demon World Boba Shop. So this year I read Demon World Boba Shop number 3, and I just love this series so much. Essentially, it is about our main character Arthur, who used to live in like the modern world and our world, but then he dies and he's reborn in a new world that's full of demons, but the demons are all really nice, and it's just a really nice and cozy world, and everyone is usually just happy. And after his life on Earth, that is exactly what he wants. He just wants to be in a place that is happy and nice and relaxing. And so this series just follows his everyday life with him learning more about this new world, learning more about being a tea master, making new friends, and even falling in love. And this series is just so cozy and really is one of those books that feels like a warm hug. And this series is just like the ultimate comfort series for me. And when I'm feeling burnt out and I just like need something to read that's very low stakes and comforting, then I always turn to this series. Question number 12, most beautiful book you have acquired this year. So I have 2. And they are both Fairy Loot editions. The first is The Scorpion and the Night Blossom by Amelie Wen Zhao. This book is just like absolutely gorgeous, so let's take a closer look at it. The second book is The Floating World by Axio, which again, this edition is absolutely gorgeous. So again, let's take a closer look at this. So question number 13, and the final question is, what books do you need to read before the end of the year? So there is one book that I need to read, and one book that I told myself I would read before the end of this year because it's just been sitting on my bookshelf for too many years unread. And that is The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue by V.E. Schwab. And so this one I bought years ago at this point. And I've been kind of avoiding it because it's a super popular book and I'm kind of afraid to start it and then like not like it or something. But I need to read it by the end of this year because it's time. Alright, so those are all the questions for the mid-year book tag. Let me know down below a book you read this year that made you happy, because I'm always looking for feel-good books that will put a smile on my face. So yeah, thank you for watching. Until next time, bye!